Here at the Church of Immortality, we take the value of life to be self-evident, meaning it is not life that needs to justify itself, but death that needs to justify itself. And it is not people seeking more life, immortalists, who must justify our desire for more life, but rather it is those who accept and even pursue death who must justify their desire for death. The mockery and dismissal of the wanting of life is a grave inversion. Literally, it leads to the grave. In fact, I would go as far as to say that the mockery and dismissal of life is the original sin committed in the Garden of Eden. I will definitely expound on that point in a future sermon. I could leave this sermon right there as a self-complete explanation of immortalism, but that would be dismissive to those of you who genuinely want to know what the point of more life would be. So I will put it to you this way. When you're in a dream, you usually don't know that you're dreaming until you wake up and look back at the dream you had, and then you realize that what you thought was really real and true wasn't. But now that you're awake and aware and conscious, it's obvious that you had just been asleep before. Now consider what Jesus said about death. Jesus likened death to a sleep state. Before resurrecting Lazarus from the grave, Jesus said, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to wake him up." John 11:11-14. And in Luke 8:52, before resurrecting a girl child, Jesus says, "The child isn't dead, but asleep." And then he brings her back to life, or wakes her up. And then consider this exchange in Luke 9:59-60. Jesus invites a man to follow him, but the man says he wants to bury his father first, to which Jesus replies, "Let the dead bury the dead." In this, Jesus reveals that people who have accepted death as real and permanent may as well be dead themselves. Like sleepwalkers, though they move around like the living, they are mentally and spiritually asleep. So here, Jesus acknowledges that there are degrees of death. A totally unresponsive corpse and a living person who submits to the power of death are both dead in their own ways. If Jesus considered death to be a sleep-like stupor, he was actually saying that people who tend to the dead, by burying the dead in this case, they are also dead or asleep. And what did we just say about the sleep state? People who are asleep often don't know that they're sleeping. People dreaming often don't know that they're dreaming. So this brings us to a key point on the immortalist path. If you believe death is necessary and permanent, you don't realize it, but you are simply asleep to the fact that you're asleep. You are sleeping and do not know you're sleeping. In other words, you're unconscious of the fact that you are unconscious. Jesus has come to wake us all up, and I am repeating his message to you. The good news about unconsciousness is that it happens on a frequency scale. So some people are more awake than others. There are light sleep states, deep sleep states, comas, and then total death, but even that degree of death can be reversed if we take biblical records to be true, which I do, and presumably most Christians watching this do. Conversely, there are degrees of wakefulness. The semi-conscious state immediately above sleep is the theta wave state, above that is a beta wave state, and above that is alpha wave, where we are very alert and focused, and above that is gamma, and so on and so on. We can measure the spectrum of unconscious to conscious in terms of frequency and vibration. So one dead person, meaning one sleeping person, can be more dead or more asleep than another dead or asleep person. Likewise, one awakened person can be more awake than another awakened person. And the most awake and most conscious of all is God, the all-knowing, all-seeing, all-present God. To understand how this all works, we must review what a frequency is. After all, our entire universe is comprised of frequencies. God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all, and in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So from the very beginning, there was light and there was sound, vibrations, frequencies. I will elaborate on this in the next sermon.